There's a reason most people live quietly in conformity. They fear the chaos of a liberated mind. But what if that chaos was not your enemy, but your power? What if you could shape a mind so dangerous, so untamed by society's chains, that the world either bows to it or breaks before it? In this video, we're going to expose the architecture of such a mind, not one built from comfort or agreement, but from rebellion, solitude, inner fire, and terrifying clarity. You'll see how true mental power is not about how much you know, but how ruthlessly you think. And by the end, if you stay with me, you'll walk away with a blueprint to become the person society whispers about but never dares to confront. Now, let's begin with the first brick in this unshakable structure. Before a mind becomes powerful, it must become dangerous. And before it becomes dangerous, it must first die to one of the most poisonous needs ever planted in the soul of man, the need to be liked. Approval is the most seductive prison. It is not built with stone or steel, but with smiles, compliments, nods of acceptance. It is the cage made invisible by our hunger for love. But love, when it comes without truth, without challenge, is not love. It is fear in disguise, and fear is the enemy of all strength. From birth, you are trained to win approval. Smile. Don't make others uncomfortable. Don't question. Don't shout. Be agreeable. Fit in. The world celebrates the tame, not the free. And yet, the tame are never remembered. It is the rebel who carves reality. But rebellion is not about rage or destruction. It is the willingness to be misunderstood, to be hated, to be the outcast that stares back at society and says, "I will not bend." This is not easy. To live without approval is to risk exile. And exile is a kind of death. You will be labeled arrogant, cruel, selfish. You will be called too much, too intense, too different. But the truth is you are too awake, and the sleeping fear the sound of the awakened. They will try to shame you back into silence, drag you into their rituals of sameness. They will whisper that something is wrong with you, not because you are broken, but because you are whole. And whole people cannot be controlled. When your mind begins to resist, to think thoughts unapproved by the herd, you will feel the pull of loneliness. You will hunger for the nods, the likes, the applause. And in those dark moments, you must ask yourself, do I want to be admired by sheep or feared by shepherds? There is no middle path. If you want to be free, truly free, you must accept that some will not just dislike you, they will hate you. And their hatred will be proof of your liberation. Consider the strongest minds in history. Were they ever adored by the world while they lived? No. They were reviled, imprisoned, assassinated, exiled. It is only after death that society dares to admire them, once they are no longer a threat. While alive, the very thoughts were a mirror showing the masses what they refused to see: their own cowardice. That mirror enrages. And that rage is a gift, because when they hate you for your thoughts, you are no longer asleep. You are awake in a nightmare world, and that awareness is power. But here is the paradoxy: the more independent your mind becomes, the more the world will claim you are dangerous. And they are right. You are dangerous. You have shed the skin of conformity. You are no longer seduced by validation. You can stand alone without trembling. And that makes you untouchable. Because what can they take from a man who needs nothing from them? What can they threaten a mind that does not flinch at rejection? What chains can hold a soul that dances in solitude? They will try to bring you back, with affection, with guilt, promises of warmth and belonging. But understand, the warmth they offer is the fire that burns your individuality. Their belonging is the price of your silence. Their affection is conditional, and the conditions are obedience. Do not forget, those who worship approval will never respect strength. They will only resent it. Your strength will remind them of their weakness. Your clarity will expose their lies. Your freedom will condemn their chains. And for that, they will punish you. You will be mocked for your beliefs, laughed at, dismissed, not because you are wrong, but because your courage humiliates their comfort. The masses want safety, not truth, familiarity, not depth. But you are not here to be accepted. You are here to be awake. You are here to disturb. You are here to become something they cannot predict, define, or control. So you must decide, will you betray yourself to be loved by the crowd, or will you betray the crowd to be true to yourself? One path offers applause, but it starves your soul. The other offers silence, solitude, fear, but it builds a mind no one dares to challenge. There comes a time in every individual's life when the mask cracks. The smile fades, the light grows dim, and something begins to whisper from beneath the surface. A voice you've tried to silence for years. You've kept yourself distracted. Achievements, relationships, pleasures, but late at night in silence that voice emerges again. It asks questions no one wants to answer. It brings memories that sting, regrets that haunt, desires that shame, and fears that feel too monstrous to name. Most will run from it. They'll drown themselves in noise, in consumption, in shallow positivity. They will repeat mantras about self-love without ever daring to meet the self. But you, if you want to build a mind so strong it terrifies people, you cannot run. You must stop, turn, and walk straight into that voice, into the abyss, into yourself. Because nothing outside of you is more dangerous than what lives unexamined within you. You were not born whole. You were born raw, an amalgamation of impulses, instincts, ancient desires, and inherited wounds. You learned early what parts of you were unacceptable, so you buried them. You constructed a mask, a personality. You learned to say what others wanted to hear, to feel what others wanted you to feel. But the parts you buried did not die. They wait in the dark, in the corners of your unconscious, and they are still there, angry, rejected, and powerful. Your rage, your jealousy, your lust, your thirst for dominance, your hunger for meaning, your despair, your shame. All these exiled pieces of you are not your enemies. They are your untamed energies, wild gods that, if ignored, will destroy you. But if confronted and integrated, will make you unstoppable. This is what no one tells you. The path to a terrifying mind is not through perfection. It is through confrontation. It is through crawling into your own cave of horrors and daring to speak with the monsters you meet there. Those who never confront themselves become victims of themselves. They lash out, not knowing why. They sabotage, then call it fate. They live enslaved by emotions they claim to have mastered. But their house is built on rotting wood. Their minds are decorated but hollow. And when pressure comes, real, existential pressure, they shatter. Not because they are weak, but because they never made peace with their darkness. But the one who descends willingly into himself, who sits with his shadow and listens, who resists the temptation to judge and instead chooses to understand, that man cannot be shaken. He does not fear being exposed because he has already seen the worst of himself. He does not crave praise because he has already learned to live with silence. He does not fear betrayal because he has already faced the traitor within. Imagine it, a man who knows every part of himself, who has felt every craving, every impulse to destroy, every urge to manipulate or retreat, and yet has not been destroyed by it. A man who can say, yes, that is in me, and I choose how it moves. That is not weakness. That is power at its rawest. And people fear that kind of power, not because it harms them, but because it reminds them of how little they know themselves. The world does not teach you to look inward. It teaches you to curate an image, to hide behind ideologies, to speak with borrowed convictions. But none of that can withstand life's deepest challenges. Only the man who has built his soul with the bricks of honesty can walk through hell without trembling. And that journey begins where most refuse to go, into the mirror that shows you not what you want to be, but what you truly are. And here is the part no one expects. The deeper you go, the more you realize your strength was never missing. It was trapped, beneath the guilt, beneath the denial, beneath the fear of judgment. Your strength was hidden in the very places you were taught to avoid. And now, with trembling hands and burning eyes, you begin to dig. You do not flinch at what you uncover. You do not look away. You name it, you own it. And slowly, piece by piece, you reassemble yourself. Not as the version others wanted, but as something far more dangerous, something real. You are no longer the polite fiction. You are the awakened force. You carry your light and your darkness together. You are not afraid of what people will think if they see your scars, because those scars have become symbols of your sovereignty. The world cannot shame what you've already embraced. The world cannot control what you've already understood. And this terrifies them. Not because you are violent, because you are free. There are prisons that never use bars. Chains forged from politeness, from conformity, from carefully enforced silence. You feel it when you're about to speak and a voice whispers, "Don't." You feel it when you begin to ask questions that unsettle the group, and eyes narrow, bodies shift, the room thickens with tension. That is not coincidence. That is control. You were trained not to think too deeply, not to doubt too loudly, not to see too clearly, because dangerous minds, those who refuse to kneel to the idols of popular opinion, have always threatened the comfort of the herd. It begins with a question, a real one you weren't supposed to ask. Why do I believe what I believe? Whose voice echoes in my moral convictions? Where do these rules come from, and who benefits if I obey them without resistance? That's when it starts. The cracking of illusions, the unraveling of borrowed values. Suddenly, you see that your thoughts were never entirely your own. They were planted, repeated, reinforced, not with violence, but with rewards, with approval, with belonging. The truly strong mind isn't just intelligent. It is heretical. It walks into the temples of accepted truth and dares to laugh. It sees the sacred as suspect, refuses to bend before collective sentiment. And for that, it is hated. Because the one who thinks freely exposes how much others are pretending, how much they've sacrificed their clarity for comfort. They will call him arrogant, reckless, dangerous, and they are right. He is dangerous, not to truth, but to the system of lies that protects the fragile egos of the majority. You cannot become mentally unshakable until you are willing to think what others fear to imagine, until you no longer flinch when your thoughts offend, until you stop needing agreement. The weak mind panics in the face of disapproval. It clings to consensus like a child clings to its mother. But the strong mind, the terrifying mind, walks alone. It sits in solitude with questions no one else dares to ask, and it endures the burning silence that follows when there is no one to affirm it. That is the crucible where mental invincibility is forged. Most people speak to be accepted, but the one with the terrifying mind speaks because truth demands it, and truth is rarely sweet. It is often cruel, brutal. It tears away the layers people have wrapped themselves in for years. It strips them naked before themselves. And for this, the bearer of such truth will be despised. He becomes the mirror they cannot bear to face, not because he insults them, but because his very existence exposes what they've refused to see. And here lies the paradox. To build a mind that terrifies others, you must first terrify yourself. You must be willing to entertain ideas that dismantle everything you were told to hold sacred. You must learn to think thoughts that burn, that leave scars, that change your soul permanently. Not every idea is worth embracing, but every idea worth fearing is worth examining, not to believe it, but to understand what its existence reveals about your reality. The world will tempt you with easy answers, political slogans, religious absolutes, moral binaries. But every mind that becomes strong must shatter those toys and go deeper. Real thinking is not an act of obedience. It is war against false certainty, war against cultural hypnosis, war against the seductive simplicity of group identity. And it is lonely. You will lose friends. You will outgrow mentors. You will be exiled from circles that once praised you, because you dared to think beyond the script. But in that exile, you discover your edge, the place where most retreat and you advance, the battlefield where others hide and you confront. You begin to see how fear shaped the minds around you. Not just fear of death, fear of thinking. They call it offensive, controversial, problematic. But what they really mean is it threatens their illusion, and your willingness to live without illusion makes them tremble. Not because you are evil, but because you are awake. Can you live without the need to be understood? Can you hold thoughts so large they alienate you from everyone you love? Can you question your nation, your family, your gods, and still look in the mirror without flinching? This is not rebellion for its own sake. This is the pursuit of raw intellectual sovereignty, the kind that does not ask for permission, the kind that carves its own path in the stone of human limitation. And then something strange begins to happen. People who once dismissed you start to watch you in silence. They don't know what you see. They don't know what you know. But they feel it, a weight in your presence, a certainty in your gaze, a calm refusal to flinch. They don't trust you, but they respect you. Because even if they can't admit it, you remind them of something buried deep inside them. A voice they once heard, long ago, before the world taught them to fear it. That voice, you listened to it. You followed it into the dark, and you came back with fire in your eyes. They told you to escape pain, to medicate it, to pray it away, to bury it beneath distractions and affirmations. But they lied. Pain is not your enemy. It is your architect. While others run from suffering, the terrifying mind walks straight into it. Not because it enjoys agony, but because it knows a secret the world cannot bear to speak aloud. Pain is the birthplace of depth, and depth is where true power is born. Think back. Every moment that changed you, truly changed you, had pain standing at the center of it. Betrayal, humiliation, failure, abandonment. Those were your teachers, not your friends, not your mentors, not your comfort. It was the fire that carved out the corridors of your character. And yet, you've been told to avoid it, to label it trauma, to drown it in consumption and fake positivity. But what if your wounds were not meant to be healed in the way they told you? What if they were meant to be weaponized? The weak mind collapses in the face of suffering, curses its misfortune. It becomes smaller, bitter, compliant. But the terrifying mind, the terrifying mind uses pain like stone uses a chisel. It endures not blindly, with cold precision. It doesn't just survive trauma, it reorganizes itself because of it. It absorbs the weight of agony and bends it inward, until it becomes endurance, clarity. Pain doesn't break this mind. it sculpts it. Do you want to know who cannot be manipulated? The one who has suffered so deeply that nothing external compares. The one who has lived through psychic collapse and clawed his way back without begging for validation. You cannot scare a man who's made peace with the darkest parts of himself. You cannot bribe him, shame him, cancel him, guilt, trip him, or seduce him. He has looked into the abyss of his own soul and didn't blink. He walks with his shadows, and they obey him now. Most people are ruled by the memory of pain. They will sell their dignity, their truth, even their souls, just to avoid feeling what they once felt. That is the system's trap. Use your past to keep you in chains. But you, if you are to become formidable, must reverse the polarity. Let the pain fuel you, not cage you. Remember every betrayal, every rejection, every moment of isolation and despair, not to drown in it, but to study it, sharpen it, and load it like ammunition into the chamber of your future self. There is a threshold, a moment in every person's suffering, where a choice must be made. You can let it define you as a victim, or you can let it refine you as a weapon. The terrifying mind chooses the latter. It turns every heartbreak into focus, every humiliation into fire, every loss into leverage. While others complain about life's unfairness, this mind smiles at the chaos. It thrives there. Because pain is no longer something to survive, it is something to master. But this transformation doesn't come from reading books or repeating mantras. It comes from sitting in the silence of your own agony and refusing to escape. It comes from letting the pain speak and hearing what it has to say without flinching. It comes from rejecting every soft hand that tries to pull you back into comfort before you're done evolving. You stay in the fire, you learn its language, and you emerge speaking it fluently. And once you do, people will sense it. They won't be able to explain it, but they'll feel the weight in your presence. You will trigger their fear because you embody what they've been running from. You remind them of their own pain, unfaced, unprocessed, untreated. They will say you're intense, too much, emotionless, cold. But it's not coldness, it's composure. You simply no longer shake when the storm comes because you became the storm. In every era, those who terrified the world were not the ones who avoided pain. They were the ones who integrated it. The madmen, the prophets, the revolutionaries, they were all forged in agony. But instead of letting it destroy them, they married it. And from that union came something the average mind cannot understand: calm savagery, ruthless grace, the terrifying stillness of someone who is blood and did not beg. And so the real question is not, how do I stop hurting? The real question is, what will I do with my pain? Because pain is the only truth that cannot be argued with. It is more honest than praise, more permanent than pleasure, more instructive than theory. The terrifying mind turns pain into prophecy, into strategy, into a kind of brutal compassion that sees suffering in others and does not flinch. Because once you understand that pain was your greatest mentor, you begin to realize something even more unsettling. Maybe it was never your enemy at all. Most minds are built in public. They are shaped by applause, by mirrors, gaze of others. Every thought filtered through approval, every ambition neutered by the fear of disapproval. This is the invisible prison of the average man. He doesn't think, he echoes. He doesn't live, he performs. His values are borrowed, his courage conditional. He doesn't walk into a room to speak truth, he walks into a room to be liked. But the terrifying mind, it is built in silence. Not just any silence, but the kind so profound it echoes. The kind that makes men squirm. This mind is not sculpted by popularity, it is chiseled by the absence of it. Where most people require validation to exist, the terrifying mind exists without need. It does not tremble when unseen. It does not shrink when unloved. It does not die when misunderstood. It was born in isolation, and that is where it became dangerous. You see, there's a secret most never discover. The moment you no longer need the world, you gain power over it. As long as your identity is tied to acceptance, you will always be its slave. You will lie to keep friends. You will kneel to keep your job. You will betray yourself to keep a lover. But the terrifying mind is immune to this. It has outgrown the addiction to approval. It speaks not to be praised, but because truth demands a voice. This kind of solitude is not loneliness. Loneliness is the hunger for others. Solitude is the mastery of oneself. While the masses need to be constantly entertained, comforted, reassured, the terrifying mind can sit with its own thoughts for hours, days, years. It becomes its own source of clarity, of amusement, of intensity. And when it finally speaks, it does not echo the world. It challenges it. Now here's where the suspense begins. What happens when such a person walks among us? Someone who is no longer playing by the social contract. Someone who does not smile to be accepted or agree to be tolerated. Someone who doesn't fear being labeled arrogant, too harsh. Such a mind terrifies not because it is cruel, but because it is incorruptible. You cannot seduce it with fame. You cannot manipulate it with shame. You cannot distract it with trivial pleasures. It is focused, and its focus feels like a weapon. When you no longer seek permission to think, you start to perceive truths others are blind to. You notice the lies baked into tradition, the weakness sold as virtue, the cowardice celebrated as compassion. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. This is the beginning of your exile. The terrifying mind is often exiled before it is understood, branded a rebel, a madman, a heretic, not because it's wrong, but because it terrifies those who are still enslaved to consensus. But here's the twist. In exile, the terrifying mind only grows stronger. In solitude, it sharpens itself like a blade, because it is not distracted by small talk, by meaningless social climbing, by empty praise. It has time to think, to build, to stare into itself until it becomes more than a mind. It becomes a mirror, reflecting the fears of everyone who sees it. And those who fear it will try to destroy it, not with weapons, but with ridicule, with gossip, with silence. But what they do not realize is this: their rejection is fuel. Their fear is confirmation. To be feared by the weak is to be on the right path. Not because fear is the goal, but because it is the inevitable side effect of authenticity. When you no longer perform, those still trapped in performance will resent you. Your mere presence will confront them with their own compromise. Your silence will expose their noise. Your discipline will shame their excuses. And so they will call you dangerous, not because you are violent, but because you are free. There is no greater power than indifference to false judgment. When they cannot control your mind, your time, your emotions, they panic, they label, they exile, but they cannot destroy what does not beg to be included. That is what they don't understand. The terrifying mind has already made peace with being alone. It has already buried the need to be celebrated. So there is nothing left to take from it. The question now is, can you walk that path? Can you disconnect from the dopamine of likes, of compliments, of safe ideas? Can you walk into a room and say what you believe even if it costs you everything? Can you endure the loneliness that comes before the power? Because there will be a time, inevitably, when your principles will isolate you. And that's the test. Compromise your truth to be embraced, or will you embrace exile and become unstoppable? Most will not. Most will fold. They will return to the warmth of mediocrity and tell themselves they never wanted more. But a few, just a few, will choose the silence, the hard silence, the silence where nothing reflects back except the raw outline of who you are and who you could become. And in that silence, the terrifying mind is born, not from applause, not from praise, not from love, but from the fire of total independence. You were not born to be agreeable. You were not placed here to blend in, to obey, to mimic the gestures of polite society while your inner voice screams to be heard. You were born with the terrifying potential to think for yourself, entirely, ruthlessly, dangerously. But that power is buried beneath layers of comfort, noise, and submission. And unless you burn those layers, you will never know the size of the mind that lies beneath. To build a mind so strong it terrifies others is not to seek power over them. It is to become immune to the illusions that enslave them. It is to sever your addiction to validation, to endure the solitude of truth, to think thoughts that rupture your own complacency. It is to die as the person they trained you to be, and rise as the one you were meant to become. But here's the tragedy: most will never even begin, because the cost of that rebirth is everything they think they are. So ask yourself, do you really want to be free? Or do you just want a more impressive cage? Because if you choose freedom, you must be ready to lose friends, respect, applause, even love. You must be ready to be misunderstood, feared, abandoned. That is the price. But on the other side of that price is the terrifying mind. And the terrifying mind is not afraid to walk alone, because it knows something the others don't. It knows the world was never designed to understand you. It was only ever meant to be broken by you, so break it. Break the silence. Break the masks. Break the need to be liked, the fear of exile, the prison of politeness. And when they ask why you are so different, so distant, so dangerous, look them in the eye and say nothing, because a mind that's strong never needs to explain itself.